We all have different types of referencing systems in our minds to organize time. How we feel about a specific event at a point in time combined with the intensity of that feeling, gets stored, almost like a location in our multidimensional mind structure, of which the heart, mind, and body essentially makes up the key components of the structure, and their constant interaction completes the system. As with maps, the referencing system is so important because if it isn't consistent across all users, distortions will absolutely manifest themselves, and maps created of the same place by different people will not line up properly. These error propagations have been known to mappers for eons, and coordinate translation systems were developed to connect various differing coordinate reference styles to help minimize those translation errors over time. This is not to be confused with map projection errors. Translation errors result from how the cake is put together before being cooked, and projection errors are more related to how the cake is cut and served. We've been perfecting this, and still are, since the origin of maps. If the definition of time begins to change based on new observations and data that wasn't known previously, our minds would have an incredibly difficult time trying to sort that out if we've set it up differently from each other based on the most efficient method for which to remember things. It's called spatial synesthesia if you want to research that a little more. I don't think it's a special gift only certain people get. I believe we are all wired to create some form of referencing system for this in order to understand where everything fits compared to what is being observed, and right now we're merely working it out so we can communicate better. As a child, this is so basic, no wonder nobody ever talks about it, and we are just discovering it now. The thing is, until we understand it better, it's conceivable that people construct their broader realities based on different time scales. Biblical timelines don't mesh at all with the scientific version of time. If a child was raised in a more biblical environment, for example, and then goes on as an adult into the sciences, the brain cannot reconcile those differences in time easily. It takes time to create another slide rule in order to fit things together. If a person has only one time reference system developed in their mind, they will clash deeply with someone whose system was based on a different scale. I have both. I've spent much of my adult life trying to reconcile them. They did not get tossed into the closet, they were the two holding it all together as it started pulling apart. Perhaps these Mandela effects are merely evidence of our referencing systems for timelines being revised more quickly to keep up with the massive influx of knowledge accessible to more and more through the internet. I like it. Now, how to describe my method of sorting, as this is a whole other issue and is specific to an individual's method of making sense of things. I have no idea how to explain how I do it in my mind other than to say it feels like for every new time reference system I came across, I created a ruler and mapped it with linear notches and specific beginnings and ends and added it to the pile. Now I have a pile of rulers that don't line up. Not at all in some cases, not even on the same plane. To the point that I feel they must be outliers. I may have even tossed them, who can say? I probably did. This was all done subconsciously, I was not aware I was doing it. This is the key point. Until today. Right now, whenever or wherever that is. As I review how I do it, this is the best I can explain as to what the rationale was at the time. Now it feels like new data is coming into play that I didn't have when initially setting the scale on a ruler, and some rulers that didn't fit before suddenly lined up when the missing piece was added. I am always working with limited data in this world, so naturally it must be an expansive thing the brain just keeps up with. Maybe it would be easier to just toss out all the rulers that don't fit and start fresh with more information? I honestly believe that is exactly what I have been doing these past few years. But I can't help but compare them to some of the old rulers I remember but tossed. Because even though I tossed them, I still remember them. And they really don't line up anymore. Up on the wall they go as a fine remembrance of a pretty decent storyline that wasn't true, even if you believed it. And if you aren't prepared for that, it's a big deal. It's real and it's happening in every brain connected to the internet. It has to. I see now that I was fortunate to have stumbled upon a method that worked pretty well for me considering what information about the world I had access to in the 70s and 80s. The paragraph above is the best I can do at explaining how it feels to work. It's much like a puzzle game of lining up and fitting up slide rules that can be stretched and shrunk with new information. It feels like we're all undergoing that process, and how easy or difficult it is, may be dependent on how many rulers are piled up in a room you didn't even know was there. They got tossed in there because most of them make no sense if you believe that time and space is fixed. I recently dug out a few of my own to revisit. Maybe I missed something? I know other scales exist, logarithmic, exponential, etc. Yet, for some reason I had resisted applying those scales to time when used to assist in memory, recollection. Or did I? That's even more profound, if my brain did it for me and now it makes even less sense. So, yes, a time referencing coordinate system that is uniquely different in its construct to each person is getting a huge upgrade, as we collectively process new information and try to make sense of time. This is intense. And we can do it. We always have. In closing, this is my truth about the gift of time. Time is not a constant variable, never has been, never will be. It is a tool for healing. We use it freely and for however long we need to. It is perfectly malleable to fit our healing requirements, and none of us understand it until the healing reaches a certain point that new content becomes unlocked, like an expansion pack that, surprise surprise, came with the game and you didn't know it. Thank you for listening.